Hi there. Welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Kelsey. I'm a voice actor in Chicago, and today I will be reacting to Pope Fights. Pope Fights by Overly Sarcastic Productions. And this was suggested by Stormwolf. Thank you, Stormwolf. You have a cool username. Yeah. Let's see some popes in the ring. Literal or metaphorical? I don't know.
Pope like our boy Francis, you might reasonably think that being a good person is a prerequisite for being the holiest guy in Christendom. You might imagine that the Pontifex Maximus would never be the type of person to leverage their divine responsibility for such earthly trifles as material gain or political expediency. Well, to that, I say that you have clearly never seen a good old-fashioned Pope fight. Pope fight?
Pope fight?
Yes, Pope fight. So, for the next 9 minutes, allow me to take you back in time, to a simpler time, when the Western Roman Empire had disintegrated and the land around the city of Rome itself was governed by the only guy in town who had any semblance of power, the Pope. For over 1,000 years, the Papal States ruled over the center of Italy while overseeing the religious life of all of Europe. While today's Pope is almost solely a spiritual leader, the medieval popes were functionally kings, and boy, did they act like it. With the stage set, let's go down to the ring for tonight's first Pope fight! In one corner, he's lean, he's mean, he's 20 years old and became Pope through bribery and nepotism. It's Benedict IX! And in the other corner we have...
That's nuts.
Wait a minute. Why are there 3 popes here? Who approved this schedule? You know what? Okay, whatever. So, Benedict here didn't actually care about doing all of that complicated Jesus stuff, and he used the office to enrich his already monstrously wealthy family. 8 years later, and the cardinals decided that they didn't want a greedy toddler for a leader, and they got him out of office the same way that he got in. Bribery. A priest named Giovanni fought gangster with gangster and made Benedict an offer that he couldn't refuse. Basically, Benedict sold the papacy, and Giovanni became Pope Sylvester III.
Whoa.
Okay, so that's a pretty sacrilegious thing to do, but at least we're done, right? No. Time for round 2. So, 3 brief months later, Benedict decided that he wanted to be Pope again because he had so much fun defrauding the people of Rome the first time, so he marched an army into the city and declared himself as Pope again. But then, just a month after he handed the cardinals a fresh new succession crisis, Benedict decided that he wanted out, again, so he could get married. His godfather became Pope Gregory VI, and that's it? No? Okay, round 3. It seems like beating dead horses was another one of Benedict's hobbies in addition to wholesale corruption. So, Benedict's wife-to-be noped right on out of there, and he decided that he wanted to be Pope again. Meanwhile, poor Sylvester is still out there sulking in the hills, so there are 3 people claiming to be Pope at once. To settle the matter, the Holy Roman Emperor, that is to say the German Emperor, rode into town and held a council, where he found Sylvester to have no legitimate claim, Benedict to not even slightly be worthy of being Pope, and Gregory guilty of simony. All 3 were tossed out, and a German bishop became Pope Clement II. But wait, there's more!
My gosh.
A year later, Clement II died, and who else but Benedict came strolling back to the Vatican for term number 3.
He's an opportunist, and he's resourceful. I'll give him that.
6 months later, however, the Holy Roman Emperor had just about had enough of the antics, so he swiftly excommunicated and exiled Benedict for good. One cardinal called him a demon from hell in disguise as a priest, which is pretty hardcore, especially for a priest. But honestly, to me, the most shocking part is that he didn't try for a 4th time. Benedict definitely qualifies as a meme pope, words I never imagined saying back to back. Given this colossal mess, it might be little surprise that the Greek Orthodox Church of the Byzantine Empire broke off from Catholicism for good just 6 years later. Well, there you have it, folks. The final score for our first Pope fight is Benedict 3, sticking to a decision for more than 20 minutes, 0. Okay, but now we're done, right?
He had to be like 24
boy, check
at
the
that
timestamp,
time,
kiddo.
though.
We're just getting started over here. So, let's move on to our next Pope fight this evening, and there's no one here.
No Pope.
Well, see, to avoid the bribes, murders, and nepotism that had plagued the papacy for a few centuries in general, and the past few years in particular, they developed what we now know as the Papal Conclave, where popes are elected by secret ballot to ensure a peaceful transition of divine authority through what in theory would be a just and capable line of popes. So this worked out pretty well for a couple centuries, but in 1292, 2 warring factions of cardinals drew out the conclave from the usual couple weeks to 2 entire years.
Oh my gosh!
The Papal States were without its ruler, and Rome was a mess. In the confusion, a hermit monk wrote to the conclave, warning the cardinals that the almighty hand of God would dope smack the eternal salvation out of them if they kept screwing around all decade long. And as it happened, the cardinals were so impressed that they elected him pope, marking possibly the only instance in which anyone was hired by telling their interviewers to go to hell. I mean, hey, if
no
it works,
kidding.
it works. So this monk becomes Pope Celestine V, and he proceeds to do nothing. Yeah, honestly, he was kind of a stooge. The only thing he ever really did in his first 5 months was help out the French allied king of Naples by appointing his mooks to church positions. Oh yeah, did I say first 5 months? I meant only 5 months. When it became unavoidably clear that the ascetic monk that had no relevant experience in running a complex bureaucracy wasn't good at his job, he went to the cardinals. And they said, "What is your first decree?" He said, "I want to be allowed to quit." "Alright, what's your second decree?" "I quit." And honestly, it makes sense. He never even wanted to be pope in the first place.
Right.
He just wanted somebody.
He just wrote a letter because he was frustrated and people were like, "You're the pope." He's just like, "Guys, please, I don't want this. I just want to be a monk."
To be pope to end the deadlock. But be careful what you wish for, because Boniface VIII became the next pope, and he wasted absolutely no time throwing Celestine in jail. Reason being that no one had ever voluntarily abdicated the papacy like that before, and Boniface had reason to believe that someone or another would challenge his authority and try to install Celestine back in as an anti-pope to oppose him. So the obvious solution was to cut up
anti-pope? Like Dark Link or something? Who is an anti-pope?
The middleman and just toss Celestine in prison. Boniface then proceeded to undo all 0 of Celestine's actions. He mainly just cleared away his appointees and left only the very small clause about popes being able to retire. Whether Celestine died of straight-up murder or just the fact that he was 81 years old and in prison, Boniface basically sentenced Celestine to death. Although honestly, when faced with the choice of being dead versus being pope, I'm pretty sure Celestine got what he would have preferred. Being pope is work. And at the end of the round, it's responsibilities 1, wanting to just go home and take a nap, 0. But who's this entering from the north? It's King Philip IV of France, and he's not happy, folks. In fact, Boniface and Philip feuded privately and publicly for years. At one point, Boniface wrote him a letter that literally opens with, "Listen, son," which is the respectful papal way to say, "Alright, looky here, dumbass, you're way out of your league, and if you don't shape up real soon, I'm gonna excommunicate your sinful ass so hard you'll wish I only imprisoned and maybe murdered you." So anyway, Philip IV carried on exactly as he had before, and when Boniface prepared an order of excommunication against the king, he sent French thugs to assault him, the Pope, in his own hometown, and he died within 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh!
Philip ordered a hit on the Pope.
That's wild.
Pope murdering
Can you actually imagine if anything like this happened today? That'd be nuts. I mean, I'm sure people then, if they knew about it, because I'm sure there was much more secrecy at the time and you could keep more secrets. Like, I'm sure people at the time were like freaking out as well, but like, can you imagine if something like this happened now?
Pope murderer Philip then manipulated the papal conclave to elect Clement V as the new pro-France pope. At the end of the second period, that's French king who's way outside of their lane, 1, murder Pope 0. And speaking of, that brings us to our sponsor for today's video, Pope 0. Same divine taste, 0 calories. Now back to the fight. It's after Clement steps into the Pope fight that things get even weirder. Philip, still high on his victory and ballsier than ever, decided to test his luck and yoinked the entire papacy itself out of Rome, out of Italy even, and moved it into Avignon, France. Starting with Clement, the Catholic Church operated in France under the authority of the French king for 68 years. Mind you, that whole time, the literal papal states were popeless. After almost 1 metric human lifetime of lavish living in the pocket of the French crown, Pope Urban V and his successor Gregory XI fought bitterly against the College of Cardinals to restore the papacy to Rome. The cardinals at this point had nicely settled into eating 10-course meals while everyone else in Europe was actively dying of plague. Because that's a thing now, not that they would have known that being cooped up in the purpose-built palace of Avignon all century. But anyway, that's okay now because Gregory moved the papacy back to Rome, and even though it's definitely worse for wear after 70 years of functionally no government, the church set about restoration projects to fix stuff. Now that was all well and good, but Gregory's successor, Urban VI, turned out to be, well, kind of insane. As soon as he became pope, he started locking up his opponents. You know, like a fascist. This was awkward because most of the cardinals were still French, so the obvious strategy for the half of the church leadership that didn't like Urban for obvious reasons was just to run off to France and elect Clement VII as their pope. Their argument was that the new Roman popes were an illegitimate offshoot of their rightful Avignon line. The Roman cardinals believed that independent of Urban VI's personal qualities, he was the rightfully selected pope. And at the end of round 4, our score is real Pope 1, faux Pope 1, but in French. So we've had popes retire to make way for new popes, we've had former popes contesting with current popes, we've even had murder popes and pope murderers, but now Christianity saw 2 entirely separate papacies in Italy and France, each believing that the other was a one-stop shop for every lawless heretic on earth. At this point, St. Peter's probably thinking, guys, what the hell? But Jesus is just omnisciently snacking on popcorn, loving every single minute of the drama. This, ladies and gentlemen, is no ordinary pope fight. No, no, no. This was a full-on Pope war. 2 entire papacies competed for nearly 40 years, branding the other as anti-popes. Needless to say, it didn't reflect especially well on the church when a pope is condemned as a heretic by a different pope. This went on for a while, and neither side budged, as you can imagine, but finally, cardinals from both sides met in an attempt to reconcile and succeeded in electing another anti-pope. I lost count of the rounds of this pope fight a while ago, but this is honestly getting ridiculous. The mess was mercifully concluded at the 4-year-long Council of Constance, where the second anti-pope was deposed, the Avignon anti-pope had his claim dismissed, the Roman actual pope resigned, and a new pope, Martin V, was elected by the combined council, and now we're done. Well,
also, a 4-year council. Like, man, way back when, like, think of the cost of all of those people to like stay there and eat and whatnot. Like, I don't know if they were footing the bill, who was footing the bill, but like things could just take years back then. And everyone was just like, yeah, that's just how it's done. That's nuts.
Well, there were a few anti-popes tooling around for another couple decades, but nobody cared and it wasn't a problem. As far as European Christians were concerned, the seat of the church was permanently re-established in Rome, and all of the popes between then and 2013 served for life, the way God intended. That was the year Benedict XVI became the first pope in almost 600 years to voluntarily resign, and thankfully he did so without an accompanying pope fight. And let's take one last look at the scoreboard, folks. At the end of the 5th and final round for the evening, it's lasting dignity of the medieval Catholic Church, -7, that's 1 for each succession crisis, and meme capacity of the medieval Catholic Church, maximal. Whew, that's gotta hurt. All told, though the fighting did stop, papal mischief in general continued in various forms for another century. Between the moral depravity of the Borgia Pope Alexander VI, the Medici murder conspiracy abetting Pope Sixtus IV, and a lot of indulgences being sold to finance the Renaissance reconstruction of Rome serving as the final nail in a solid gold coffin 5 centuries in the making, it may be little surprise that Martin Luther famously said, quote, "Screw this, screw the church, I'll do it myself, don't at me." Harsh words. But still, as far as the complete abandonment of spiritual responsibility for material luxuries goes, you just can't beat a good pope fight. Finally, and this is basically irrelevant, but it is deeply important to me that you're aware Pope Francis has a rock album. Yes, the Pope has a rock album. Other Pope Zero, Pope Francis Infinity. Play it!
Honestly, I love learning about history. I think it's fascinating, especially like I had no idea that the seat of the papacy was moved for 68 years. That's a long time. That's crazy. And that like the Vatican had to be restored. I knew none of that. But the biggest bomb drop for me was truly that Pope Francis has a rock album. I'll be listening to that tonight, at least doing a bit of a sampler platter of the tracks. I love that. Wow. Pope fights, huh? We got anti-popes. We've got people putting hits on people. It's a lot. Wow. Well, thank you for that, Storm Wolf. That was illuminating and a little wild. And thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this, and we will see you next time.